folks, my name is Janaki.
And this is Madame Bathsheba.
And together we are Catamancy Tarot. So today I wanted to do a basket video. I know I haven't been making videos super frequently recently this summer, but this sort of idea for a basket kind of came up organically, and I'm really into using these decks, so I thought I would just hop on and make one. So the theme that I'm feeling, I got one new Oracle deck, and it's this little guy. It's the Wild Alchemy Lab, and it's kind of the inspiration for the basket today. So in the basket, we've got all things kind of alchemical, like imagining you're in an alchemical laboratory and you're cooking some stuff up. Maybe you're cooking up some, enlightenment, perhaps the great work, perhaps some gold. Whatever it is, we're in the laboratory. And then I also wanted to talk about some of my kind of more hermetic decks. And hermeticism is kind of coming out of this history of, maybe you've heard of the Western mystery tradition or the Golden Dawn, but it has these roots in this sort of syncretic North African and Mediterranean mystery traditions of Egypt and Greece and Rome, and these sort of historical overlapping things. So I've also got some decks that are exploring kind of Hermeticism, and I'm also going to show some of my Esoteric decks. I think there was a tag made by, was it the Tarot Shrink of my Esoteric decks? So this is kind of in addressing that, but a little bit more, themed. So apologies if this video is a little bit long-winded today. I feel like I've got a lot of thoughts and I'm a little bit out of practice with the videos. And as always, feel free to stick around to the end while I'll do a little short communal reading for us. And with that, let me go ahead and show you what's in my basket this month.
Alrighty, so as with a lot of my basket videos, it usually starts out that I have one deck that kind of inspires the theme, and this time around it's this deck. This is the Wild Alchemy Lab Oracle. It's an astro-botanical deck, and it's written by Gemma Foster and illustrated by Roxanne Maniquez. And I've really been digging it. So I don't have a ton of plant decks. I am not the biggest plant nerd. I am curious, I would say, but I am not adept or skilled. The only other plant oracle I have is the Dirt Gems. And I saw this is a new mass market deck, and as soon as I saw it, I was really, I was hooked. And I really like the illustrations. They're evocative of, the classic botanical illustrations, but these somehow feel a little bit more contemporary with like the font. And then here's the poppy. Everyone knows I love a good poppy. And I was really intrigued by all of the kind of astrological symbols. As you can tell, there's 4 suits. So we've got, let's see if we can get one of everybody here. Here we go. So we've got 4 suits. So we've got air, earth, water, and fire. And I just really like the, one of the reasons I like this deck so much is like these colors are so good. Like I don't know, there's some of my favorite kind of tones and I like them so much. However, this is like far from a perfect botanical deck, I think. So I was really intrigued by all of the astrological correspondences, and as kind of a newbie to this, I was really curious about, how those associations were made, and from my understanding, sometimes the astro symbols can be quite idiosyncratic, or it depends on the practitioner, or it depends on the particular tradition you're coming out of. I don't really know. So I was really looking forward to getting this deck and like learning about it and figuring it out. Unfortunately, while this guidebook is beautiful, it doesn't have any actual information about the thing I wanted to know, which was like why are those the astrological correspondences. So we get a little bit of an introduction, and this is all of the information we really get. So we've got the element, the planets, and then there's usually kind of some zodiac signs and a moon sign. And I don't know if like, is that the moon sign when you're supposed to harvest the plant? Unclear. And there's no additional card by card information in the guidebook. Everything is on the back of the card. And so the blurbs you get are really quite short. And there isn't a ton of like divinatory information. This is mostly a like a remedy deck. So most of the card is actual recipes that you can make. Some of them seem approachable. Some of them seem like quite in depth, and like you actually need a lot of like background experience to figure out how to do some of these things. So, yeah, so this deck kind of opens up more questions than it really has answers for me at this time. But I'm still really stoked, about it. Uh, and yeah, I think they're quite pretty. Let's take a look and read the blurb here. So we have lavender here, and the little blurb is lavender is unnerving and relaxant, used to aid sleep and release tension. Culpeper's Complete Herbal recommends it for all the griefs and pains of the head and the brain that proceed of a cold cause. And so the tincture that we get here is one to disperse anxiety. So that's the kind of stuff that is on the back of the cards. I think there's sometimes you'll get a little bit of like more of the kind of the what does the energy of the plant do, rather than just what is the kind of alchemical tincture thing that you're making. But I think this is a really quite beautiful deck, and I've been using it quite a lot. And on our topic of like alchemy and like plant alchemy, I kind of dig that there are these recipes, but honestly, I'm never going to make probably most of them. And it's a little bit confusing in terms of like the idea of who this deck is for, because the some of the recipes seem to be quite advanced, and then in the guidebook it's giving you like really basic, like what is the zodiac wheel, what are these signs saying, and then it's also like telling you like the time to harvest most of these things, and then there's like a few spreads in there. But yeah, I like this deck because it makes me feel as if I might be able to brew something up, even though that's a little bit outside of my wheelhouse, and I mostly would want to use these for divination. And there's not a ton to go off of, but I think there's if you're someone who actually has a lot more experience with plants, then I'm sure you would be just fine. And so there is a little bit of a blurb, and I've found that it's enough for me to go off of, and it's also really fun just to kind of try and look at at what's going on here, and then try and kind of use the astros associations as they come up in a reading, and I've had some success with that. It's also fun as someone who doesn't really know what's going on with a lot of these herbs, to try and guess from the correspondences, like what it's good at. So we have honeysuckle, so it's air. So maybe this is something that treats something that's like a mental or something along those lines. And then we have Jupiter, Venus, and Mercury, so this feels like really kind of expansive. And then we've got Taurus, Gemini, and Cancer, which is all kind of spring, early summer signs. So maybe this is, I don't know, something springtime. Let's see. For hot heads and sore throats, energetically, honeysuckle is protective and attracts prosperity. Okay, so that's, and then to try and think about, okay, how does that fit into these? I don't know. I've really been having a lot of fun with it. But moreover, one of the things that's been really exciting about this deck is that it pairs really, really well with my favorite deck of all time, which if you've watched my channel, you'll probably know by now that my all-time number one fave is the Spolia Tarot. I think we're missing one guy. And I've just found that these, I think it's the color of the borders, but they go really well together. And I guess you might not think that Spolia is like, it's an indie deck. Unfortunately, it is out of print. But you might not think that it is like necessarily an alchemical or a hermetic deck, but in the guidebook you do get a lot of references. Like our magician here is explicitly Hermes Trismegistus, so like I think it counts as like kind of hermetic. And then there's as you can see, there's a lot of in the cards, there's also a lot of like references to Greek mythology and kind of the Greek oracle tradition. So for that reason, I'm counting it here as kind of like an honorary hermetic deck. But I just think that these guys go so well together. Here, let's do one of these things where maybe do this guy in the middle, and then you can see these guys on either side. And yeah, I just think it makes me so happy, and I've just been working with these guys like nonstop for like my daily draws, or yeah, I've got I'll draw a bunch and then just leave them out around the house. So as I'm going around doing my business, I get to see them, and then I just feel really happy. Isn't it so good? I'm really into it. I'm really into it. So yeah, that's this deck and the Spolia. In terms of kind of like, yeah, the alchemical recipe deck and Spolia. And the other deck that I think goes really well with this Wild Alchemy Lab deck is a Marseille deck, and this is this Spanish tarot, and this is a Marseille deck, but I just felt like the colors with like the purples and greens and oranges go really well. So let's see here. And it's another deck that has this kind of like cream backdrop, and I just think it goes really well. Oh yeah, it just makes me really happy. I know that it's, sometimes it can be hard to find decks that pair well with Marseille decks, and I think this one would go really well with Marseille because you can read the sort of astrological stuff. Like here, this is the Wheel of Fortune, so we've got some Jupiter energy going on, so maybe this reading is like quite expansive, and then we've got the moon in Libra over here, and we've got our Queen of Swords, so maybe this is, Libra kind of justicey vibe. So, and I don't know, it's kind of, I'm having a lot of fun with it. So that's what I've been. This deck is the one that kind of like inspired this video. So yeah, I know I spent quite a bit of time of that on that one, but we'll go ahead and move right along here. So yeah, this is a like a brand new mass market deck. And I haven't seen anyone kind of do a full flip through and review. But I was curious, and so it was a little bit of an impulse buy. But now it's like rare that your favorite deck gets a new best friend, and so I was really stoked about it. Now, in terms of my other kind of alchemical decks, the main alchemical deck that I have is this one. It's the Vitriolic Tarot by Colvin Stevenson at the Dark Exact. This is a majors only deck, but it has a few extra cards. And this is kind of it's a little bit of an abstract deck. So we've got a sigil, kind of an icon, a number, and then they're all color coded, and the colors are according to the different alchemical stages. So one way to use this deck is just kind of as a majors only deck, but I find this deck is really useful for me in different kinds of magical workings, because these I can I can use them on my altar. I can use them to kind of like charge objects, or you can also use this as kind of like an oracle deck that indicates the different alchemical processes. So we have the black phase. So you'll look on the sort of color over here, so we can see the death card is kind of unique. But it's, so we have all of the different, so we have calcination, which would be the gray cards. We have dissolution, which is violet, separation, which is red. And so the majors are divided up into all of the different alchemical stages, which is really cool. And I really love working with this deck, and I really don't mind that it's majors only. I find that it's like it's really bold, and yeah, it helps me. I use this deck in a way I don't use any other deck in my collection. Like sometimes, if I want to charge something, I can like put something here, or use these as kind of if I'm doing kind of like a big reading, where I'm using like a grand tableau kind of reading, I'll use these to kind of go underneath to indicate the kind of positions in the tableau. And it's a really neat deck. And it also has the mercury, salt, and sulfur cards for the different kind of alchemical elements here. So we've got those guys. And then we've also got the elemental cards. So that's this deck, and this deck also has it has some best friends that are also kind of like, I would say, very alchemical. So I use this deck in conjunction a lot with two others, and that's El Gran Tarot Esoterico, and then this is my Dodal Marseille. So if we'll start with this one. This is El Gran Tarot Esoterico. It's mass market. It's Fournier, just like the Spanish tarot. And it is a very kind of esoteric deck, but it's very fun. If you look at the backs here, these are probably some of my favorite backs. Very alchemical. So if we kind of follow this seven-pointed star here, we have the sun to the moon, so Sunday, Monday, and then we have Mars, Mercury, Jupiter, Venus, and Saturn. So it goes in the order of the kind of the days of the week, which is very cool. And this is if you're familiar with this deck, you'll know that this is a Picard style in the minors, and that's kind of like a really weird esoteric like branch in tarot's sort of evolutionary history. So the Picard was a French occultist who was practicing a little bit prior to the Golden Dawn, and so he came up with his sort of own tarot associations. So you'll notice in this deck, if we take a look, so let's see here, let's find a good one. So swords in this deck are actually the suit of water. As you can see, there's always water and fishes with the swords. And if we take a look at the cups, so we've got a bunch of flowers here, but sometimes you'll get a bunch of like the butterflies, and then down here we have all of the air zodiac signs. So you can see it's clearly associated with the element of air. But this deck, using it always makes me feel like an alchemist in a really fun way. It's one of those decks where I don't think I'll ever fully have this deck figured out. And if I want to do a reading, if I want to kind of do a more sort of esoteric reading where I'm just like, trying to make sense of things, or if I want to get a little bit into the sort of esoteric weeds, then this is always kind of a fun deck to do that with. And so you can take a look here. So we've got the High Priestess. So maybe we've got a moon over here. We've got an eye. We've got the Cancer, which is ruled by the moon. So there's a lot of like moon energy going on. This is water, 7 of water. 7 is also, the number of the Chariot, which is the Cancer sign. So that's the kind of like esoterica I'm kind of talking about, that these kind of decks really lend themselves to in a reading, which is quite fun, yeah. And then the other deck I mentioned that I think goes really well with the vitriolic tarot is one of I think it's my most beautiful Marseille deck. This one was made by Sullivan Hismans at the Tarot Sheet Revival, and I love the line work in this one and the colors. And I feel like if you were in an alchemical workshop in Europe, in the ye old alchemy days, this would be the tarot that you had at hand, right? So I feel like there is something to be said about these sort of older historical decks in terms of tapping into stuff like that. But I love the colors and the line work and the greens. and the blacks and the reds. Yeah, I'm really into this one. So this is another one that I kind of often use with this vitriolic tarot. I really dig it. And here, and then sometimes you'll get the world in the world, so that's like a double emphasis, which is really fun. So this is another one of my fave alchemical guys. All right, next up is a really cool little playing card deck. Now, earlier this year, I got really ambitious, and I was like, I want to learn how to read with playing cards. And I got a bunch of playing card decks, and I never really got around to studying them really closely. But this is a really interesting deck. I think it was originally, I don't know, Swiss or Dutch. But this is a 36 card deck. And it's called it's called the Game of Alchemists, and it's a particular type of card deck where in some of these kind of traditional European decks that are made for a particular type of game. So this one has the ace, but then it doesn't have 2 through 5. It just has 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So I forget the name of this type of deck. If you're curious, I can leave a comment and I can try and track that info down for you. But the other thing is it has a different court system than we're used to. Instead of a jack, king, and queen, it kind of has the under, the ober, and the king. So I think this is kind of like the apprentice, the master, and the king, which I think works kind of well for an alchemical deck. And this is a really fun one because as you see, like the aces are illustrated, but then the sort of other pip cards are just black and red, and then they have little illustrations. So I think there's there's a lot of different ways you can learn to read a playing card deck, but since a lot of these cards have images on them, I think it might be fun to try and read the images as they appear. I'm also a little bit puzzled about like how to read a card deck that's only 36 cards. Of course, there's things like Lenormand, which is a smaller deck. Actually, I'll bring these a little bit closer. But yeah, so I haven't really figured out how I would like to work with this deck, but it's really, really cute. Oh, I think it's so cute. I love these guys. The images themselves are quite charismatic. So if you have any suggestions about how to go about reading something like this, I would be very curious. And there is some hidden sort of astrological stuff, but all of the kind of words and labels I think are written either in German or Dutch. I'm not quite sure. If you know, let me know. I'm curious. So I'd have to like really do some deciphering, which could be fun. So that is my cute little alchemist card deck. I thought it was such a cool little find. A cool little find. The other deck that I feel is kind of very alchemical or gives me sort of alchemy vibes is the Oracle Belline. So this is a traditional French oracle deck. This deck has been around since the 19th century, so it's been around the block. And this this is an oracle deck that has 7 suits for the 7 classical planets, and then under each of the planetary signs, we get different keywords. So I believe we've got an owl, and it's in French, but if you know a little bit of French, you can get by. And then the little red book has it's half in English, and it has little bits. So totally accessible if you're if you're an English speaker. But Sagace, I'm pretty sure that's wisdom. So that's what we get with Jupiter and the owl, which is fun. But the illustrations are quite cute. But this is another wee little deck that I think is quite esoteric, and I love the planetary correspondences. I think it's really cool. I think this is traditionally used for like divination purposes. And yeah, Saturn. Ooh, Saturn can be, a malefic planet. So here we have, I think this would just be misfortune, or something along those lines. Right? Our little bird with the chicks for Venus. I think this is family. I don't know. I'd have to check the little. But then there's guys like this. Look at this bat. I love him so much. I love this weirdo bat carrying a rat. Oh, it's so good. So this feels. This is even though it was made in the 19th century, the illustrations you can tell are trying to kind of mimic an even older, perhaps medieval style, which is very fun. We've got some like weird Egyptian headdresses going on. We've got a rooster in love. It's very good. It's very good. So this is you can find this one sometimes. I got this deck on my last trip to France, but I'm sure you can track this down on eBay, I'm pretty sure. So those are all of my what I would say more classically alchemical decks. There's a few you might be if you're into alchemical decks, there's a couple big ones that I don't have in my collection. That if you want in case you don't know about them, I'll just go ahead and mention them here. There's, of course, the Robert M. Place Alchemical Tarot. I had that for a little while, but I ended up rehoming it. Something about just, I can't, there's something about like the cleanness of the line work and the illustrations that just weren't really, I don't know, I had a hard time kind of connecting with it, so I moved that one on. And then there's the Alchemical Visions Tarot, which is mass market and looks very cool. I don't know if I'll ever end up eventually adding that one to my collection. They have really large cards, and there's it's a combination of kind of like black and white engraving style, busy backgrounds with kind of some pops of color of the figures in the foreground. And I'm a little bit unsure. I think I'd have to give that one a closer look. But that might be pique your interest. And then I also don't own, surprise, maybe this is controversial, I don't actually own any of Kim Krantz's decks. What? I know, they're iconic. Everyone loves them. I don't know, something about her black and white pen work with the rainbow color scheme never quite rubbed me the right way. But if I got any of her decks, it would be her Alchemical Oracle. And that's a cool little hexagonal guy that everybody seems to love very much. So maybe, yeah, I don't know. I think I need to, I should probably get one of her decks just so I can, see what everyone's always on about. But yeah, her use of color isn't isn't my favorite, but yeah. Anyways, so now we're moving kind of into the second half of the video where we're gonna start looking at some more Hermetic decks. And as I mentioned, Hermeticism kind of emerged from this mixture of this North African, mostly Egyptian mythology, along with like the Greeks and later Romans, and then later you get, Hermes Trismegistus, so it's this kind of the sort of Western mystery tradition kind of emerges about through these sort of different mystery traditions of like Egypt and Greece. You have the Mercury Hermes Thoth. So to kick us off, I thought I would start us off with a mass market oracle deck called the Sibyl's Oraculum, Oracle of the Black Doves of Africa. So I heard about this. I think I saw this first on Instagram. But as soon as I read a little bit more about it, I knew that it's something I wanted to add to my collection. So the author is inspired by the Sibylline tradition, and is actually tracing the tradition of the Sibylla back to ancient Egypt or Kemet, and back to a particular temple in the Siwa Oasis, which is out in the sort of northwestern part of modern Egypt, and formerly kind of Libya. And on my, here we go. The astronomer priestesses and recent discoveries at the Siwa Oasis. And so she's kind of making this argument for the role of African women in this, what would become this sort of classical Greek and Roman traditions. So I think that her kind of perspective is really cool. And the last time I was, last December, I traveled with all of my magician friends from Los Angeles at 22 Teachings. We did a group tour of all of the temples, not all of them, but a bunch of temples in Egypt, and we actually got to visit the Oracle Temple in the Siwa Oasis, and that was like a really cool moment for me. And so I had to pick up this deck. Now this deck is it's mass market. I did go ahead and edge my copy, but this is one of those decks that has a little bit of a system going on. So you've got blue backs, you've got black backs, you've got red backs, and you've got, I think, just gray. I'm not sure what, but so there's a particular way you're supposed to kind of use the cards, but the titles of the cards, I think, give enough information to kind of go off of anyways. So here we have stillness, and then you also have them, I think, in Latin. So this death card, this is a hill in Siwa, and you can see all of those little holes in them, and those are all of the tombs. And I actually got to go in some of them, which were really, really cool. It's in this kind of old mosaic style. So this is a deck that kind of gets into the more North African influences of Greek traditions, which I think is very cool. And I've been enjoying using this deck with. So the next deck I'm going to show you, I don't think it's explicitly Hermetic, but it is the Ritual Tarot. But this is my first edition copy, and this is the deck that I actually brought with me to Egypt and with me to the Siwa Oasis. And I ended up giving people a bunch of readings that evening. I think it was at Christmas time. And so I've been enjoying using these together. So for me, the Ritual Tarot it feels like a very esoteric deck to me. And I think it goes well with our little Sibyl's Oracle. And so the Ritual Tarot, it does have some kind of, there's a lot of like sort of Greco-Roman statues. There's some allusions to ancient Egypt in here. So it does feel like it is kind of tapping into that tradition a little bit. And I just associate it with with kind of Hermeticism, because this is the deck that I sort of traveled with when I was kind of exploring a lot of those things. You know, like here you've got some, you know, very explicit Egyptian stuff going on. So that is the Sibyl's Oracle and the Ritual Tarot. And then the other oracle deck that I would put like very firmly in the Hermetic tradition, that explores more of the kind of Egyptian side of things, is the Book of Doors, an alchemical oracle from ancient Egypt. So if you're like hardcore into getting into kind of the Egyptian tradition, this is kind of, I think this is probably the most in-depth oracle out there. And it works off of this kind of like magic square. And I took actually a few classes on how to use this deck. And so this is kind of my most complex oracle deck in terms of the system. And so there's 8 families of the Egyptian gods, and in each family there are 8 members, and so that's how this grid works. So this is the one deck that I actually always keep in order, and it comes with this D8 dice, this 8-sided dice. So the way you would use it is you roll the dice. So first we'll roll for the family. So we get the 7th family, which is the family of Ptah. And each of the families have their own kind of thematic grouping meaning. And then we'll roll the dice again, and then we get 3. So we get, so if we go to the family of Ptah and go to number 3, we get this guy. So that's how that's how I use this deck. I'll actually use the dice instead of shuffling the deck, which is kind of very unique. And then if we go ahead and look in the guidebook, that's, let's see here. Ptah is the family of Earth. And so we have Geb, Sobek, and then here we have Ujit, the green goddess of the north. So then it'll give you some kind of information about her and a divinatory reading. But this guidebook is kind of explicitly Hermetic, and it builds off of some of the principles of Hermeticism. And so if that's something you're interested in, it has this, I've only done this like once, but it was like really deep. It was wild. It was crazy. So yeah, this was a very fun thing to do. But this is another one that kind of, if you're up for like going deep with a system, this is one that actually does have a lot of depth. This is a card that you can use as like a double, because if you're rolling dice, it's possible to get the same card twice. And here are just some of the cards. I think she's my favorite of all of the Egyptian gods and gods. It's hard, but when I was in Egypt, the thing that I consistently found most beautiful is that the goddess Nut is the night sky, and she's always depicted like this. And so, in all of the buildings of the temples or tombs, you get her form that's just like strewn across the ceiling, and it's really remarkable. So I love her. So here we've got a bunch of our reptile friends. So this is a very esoteric deck, and the guidebook kind of really gets into the weeds of things. So if that's something that appeals to you, I would really recommend it. She's another one of my faves. I was in a little bit of a hieroglyphics class, so learning to recognize that this is her, this is her symbol, the seven-pointed star with these sort of horns. She's a scribe priestess. Yeah, anyways, this is a deck that kind of, if you're interested in exploring the Egyptian aspect of Hermeticism, this is the deck for that. As we're getting more into the kind of the Greco-Roman side of Hermeticism, one other deck that I do eventually want to add to my collection is, of course, Thea's Hellenic Oracle. That's something that's been on my radar for the longest time, and I haven't quite pulled the trigger yet, but I'm realizing, after I showed a couple of these like Egyptian-specific oracle, I think I might need it to kind of balance things out. The next deck I'm going to show is maybe a little bit more broadly esoteric than it is sort of strictly hermetic, and that is the Kazanlar Tarot. This is one of my all-time favorite decks, and it was painted by Emil Kazanlar, who is Persian and Hungarian. But this deck really gets into, we've got a lot of the Hebrew letters. In all of the minors, we get the names of the sphere on the Tree of Life. So we get a lot of Kabbalistic associations. The suit of swords is Egyptian iconography. So here we have Cleopatra and the snake as the Five of Swords, which I think is perhaps quite appropriate here. So I think this is another deck that you can kind of get into the weeds with, just in terms of the sort of esoteric history and stories it contains. It's one of those decks that if you want to know everything that's going on in this deck, you gotta do a bit of studying, which can be a little bit, intimidating, but it's also really fun to have a deck that has so much of that depth. Here we have Osiris as the King of Swords. So we have him sort of the upside down of the death and the resurrection. The Suit of Cups is kind of Hungarian mythology. So this is Saint Martin, who was, I think he was a Roman legionnaire who gave his cloak to kind of an ascetic and then gained healing powers. Something like that. I'm not sure. I love this guy. I love the purple horses. And then the suit of wands comes from Hindu mythology, and then the suit of coins is Persian mythology. So this is, while it's not kind of explicitly hermetic, it does have a lot of like Kabbalistic stuff in here, and it's kind of in the spirit of Hermeticism, which was this kind of like Mediterranean melding of different mystery traditions. This deck also has some of this kind of multicultural esoteric melding going on. So here, I love the sun card. The sun card is so good, but you can kind of see the Thoth influence a little bit with, we've got Scorpio, Libra, we've got all of the zodiac signs going around here, right? Very cool. So that is the Kazanlar Tarot. The next two decks I'm going to show you are both printed by Fulgur Press. Actually, yeah. I'm gonna wait on the Fulgur decks because the next one I actually want to show you is the Mysteries of the Black Madonna, and this is a deck that's kind of well known and well loved on TarotTube. This is a deck by Hettienne Grobler, and while kind of on the surface, this is a deck that has some very explicit Christian iconography, of course. These are all representations of different Black Madonnas across sort of Europe and North Africa, and some in South America. There's shrines to the Black Madonna that crop up all over the world. But if you kind of pay attention to the guidebook, one of the things that this deck, one of the things that I really like about this deck is that it pays attention to these kind of deeper, longer sort of esoteric traditions. So here, this is for sure Isis. And one of the things that's interesting about the history of some of these Black Madonna shrines is that sometimes they were originally, even in Europe, there were shrines to, Isis, for example, that, then took on, had these sort of syncretic accretions. So it would be Egyptian, and then it would be Greek, and then it would be Roman, and then it would be Christian. And so you have this kind of long-term syncretism going on in a lot of places. And that gives rise to some really, really interesting and some really rich histories. And her guidebook kind of does a really good job of exploring those. So I also wanted to include this deck in here for that reason. Is it has it has kind of some of that Mediterranean history of kind of accretion going on. The next two decks I'm going to show are the Fulgur decks, and they're both made by practicing occultists and surrealist female painters in the 20th century. So the first one is Leonora Carrington's Major Arcana. And this is such a special deck. It feels really magical anytime I get it out. I love Leonora Carrington and her artwork. This is a scented deck also. There's something like very alchemical and magical about specifically making a scent for a deck, and it does feel very potent. So this is, majors only, largely influenced by the Tarot de Marseille, but Leonora Carrington was an occultist, and so she painted these as part of her kind of exploration into that. They're very, very special. So I wanted to include that here. And then on a similar note, the other deck is, of course, Tarot as Color by Ethel Calhoun. And this deck was made in the 70s, I believe. another scented deck. And this is also a very esoteric deck, and all of the cards have the Hermetic titles. So for the Chariot, we have the Child of the Powers of the Waters, the Lord of the Triumph of Light, and these images are just so incredible. I just got a message that I have low storage on my phone, so perhaps I need to speed this up. But yeah, this is my favorite, probably my favorite deck with the esoteric titles. You might be familiar with some of them kind of from the Thoth deck, and I prefer this deck to the Thoth. But I find it has kind of, if you're interested, like want to get into kind of the Hermetic titles and color magic, then this is a really good deck for that. All right. The last deck I want to show is the Draxiotos Tarot, and this is probably one of my most esoteric decks. It's huge, by the way. If we take a little tarot card, it's like 3 or 4 of them big, so it's massive. But these cards are very dear to me. They're the back of my altar, and if you notice, it's hard for you to kind of figure out which card this even is. You have to spend a little bit of time. So it's green, so I know it's the suit of Earth. You also have Jupiter and Capricorn, so it has the deacons, and then you see the number 2 over here, and then you're like, okay, this is the 2 of discs or coins, and then you can kind of really get lost into what's going on here. So here we have the 6 of Cups. And again, I only know that because it's blue. I see the number 6. I see Sun in Scorpio. That's how you know. There's no titles. So this deck like really encourages you to kind of you have to like spend some time even finding the number, looking at the color. Like this is the Chariot, and this is the Death card. But it's another deck that is very, very esoteric and kind of delves into, you can really, really lose yourself in the esoteric symbolism. Now, I don't use this deck for divination. I use this deck as like a backdrop to my altar. So every new moon cycle, I will cycle through 6 of these cards, and that's kind of my own practice and what I get up to. But this is, yeah, my last example of a very kind of alchemical, esoteric, hermetic deck. So I will leave that here for you guys. And I know this is already quite a long video, but we're gonna go ahead and do like a quick little reading to send you guys off. So I thought for our reading today, we would take a page out of this little book, and we'll go ahead and do the alchemical spread. So it's just you at the center, and then as above, so below, as within, so without. Just a cute little spread guy, and I decided we'll use the Wild Alchemy Lab plant deck. And then, ooh, look who is hiding! Look who's hiding and jumped out of there! I put him away! Weird. So, this guy's gonna, that's gonna stay right there. That's an escapee. He wants to be a part of it. Who am I to say no? So we're going to draw one of these flower cards for our center, and then I thought we would use spolia for the as above, so below positions. go. So we'll put that one there. And then we'll go ahead and give our beloved Spolia a good shuffle or two. Alrighty. So we've got as above, so below, as within, so without. So our flower is the primrose. There he is. So Venus, we've got some Venus energy, some Earth energy, Libra and Aries. Primrose. To celebrate a new start, primrose is one of the first flowers of spring and signifies new beginnings, resurrection, and hope. That's very cute. That makes sense, I guess, with Aries, because that's like the start of spring. With Venus, that kind of makes sense to me. Okay. And so we also have the Wheel of Fortune that wanted to jump out here. we'll just tuck that guy. Oh, I don't know. Maybe he can be right there. And that feels like this. I mean, Wheel of Fortune is Jupiter, right? So it's expansive. So maybe we're expanding into something new, some kind of new start, new beginning. And let's take a look at what we've got. Ooh, we've got the Star as above and the High Priestess as so below. Ooh, that feels great. I like that. And then as within, so without. Ooh, and we've got the Devil. So we've got a bunch of majors hanging out with us here. So as above, we have the Star, and I feel like the stars are the OG as above, right? So the idea that the heavens replicates what happens down on Earth. So this feels like a very, a classic as above. So in our little spread, external cosmic influences. So maybe a little bit of divine inspiration here, maybe a little bit of looking upwards, looking forwards, looking to some kind of spark here. That's lovely. And then in our so below position, and it says kind of shadowy influences here, we have the High Priestess. And here she's got this lovely serpent friend going on here. So this, again, feels like a very apt card for this position. So thinking about, we're getting a little bit esoteric here. We've got the black and white going on. So thinking about how we can take those, shadowy things that are bubbling up, perhaps in the subconscious here, perhaps in our psyche, thinking through that. Where is this fresh start? Where does the sort of gut feeling of wanting a fresh start come from? Trying to kind of feel into what kind of influence that might be coming from. And then, the as within, we've all got a little bit of this devil guy within, right? So maybe contemplating what kinds of, in terms of this, our lovely fresh start here, what are some of those things that, the within things that we want to leave behind in our new start? So, this is the idea of tidying up our insides so that our outside's life can be just as tidy. And then we've got our Queen of Cups, which also feels, You know, I feel like the Queen of Cups definitely has a relationship in my mind with the High Priestess. So I think it's interesting that in the like so below and as without have this kind of similar kind of psychic watery moon queen vibes going on. So this all feels very fun. And all of our cards here have these like blue and black and white tones. So I'm feeling some very watery vibes from all of this. I know we've got Earth in the middle here, and so we've got our Capricorn connection. Um, uh, maybe that's a connection there, but otherwise we've just got a lot of the star card is, you know, Aquarius, so air, but it's the water bearer. We've got some water going on here. I don't know. So that's just a little sample spread. What I've been trying out over here. I hope you've enjoyed. Sorry this video went on a little bit long, but it's been a while. I'm a little bit out of practice. So thanks for joining me. I will see you all next time. Bye.